Leuthard. Ladies and gentlemen, grüezi miteinander, buongiorno, buonasera, almost, no. Bonjour, allegra, buondì, good morning. Being a Swiss, we have to talk many languages, so communication is sometimes not only when it comes to languages an issue or a challenge, but mostly when it comes to environmental areas. And especially on the product carbon footprint, I'm very happy to talk to you today, as Canon has for many years been very engaged in reducing the overall CO2 in the company. Some of you have been working very long on creating a new standard, how we really measure and how we do the product carbon footprinting. So don't be offended, but I think one of the challenges we have today is based on the fact that the method is not yet confirmed and is not being accepted completely in the market. And as you can imagine, every time you publish something or you communicate something, it's always the question, how did you measure it? You know, what method are you using? And it's very distracting from the real fact, that is reduction. Secondly, I think much of the market players are not really ready. Of course, there has been a very much a surge and drive in environmental attention over the last couple of decades. However, when it comes to carbon footprint, it is still an issue, and we must admit that a lot of customers really don't understand what it does mean for their own actions. And last but not least, we have to confess that many suppliers are probably a little reluctant to really go for a full-fledged strategy on carbon reduction. And some are, I think, from personal observation, are mostly using it for marketing issues rather than for real reduction of their own carbon footprint. So I would like to give you a few examples what is necessary. And I think the whole carbon strategy of a company needs to be embedded in the strategy and the philosophy of a company. In our case, it's Kiyosei, which is in Japanese more or less saying living and working together for the common good, employees, shareholders, environment, and the society. With this, we have created, of course, an environmental chapter, which then is towards actions for green, we call it internally. Then this is finally leading to the design of products, which then is the first necessary step, so we call it the LCI design system. What does it mean? In previous years, most of the company's actions or initiatives were based around production, how we can reduce CO2 in the production process. Nowadays, we start, which is very important, with the product planning. So from the beginning, there is a clear CO2 reduction target for each product that has been developed within Canon. Then it goes through an iterative process, and finally, you have the evaluation towards the end. Does it really pay off the initiatives you were designing into the development of the product? So it has to start in the design of the products, and it should not only cover, you know, like reductions in logistics, for instance, which are also necessary, but it should start with the design of the product. To give you an example, sorry for the bad colors, this is an area we had in 2008, and you can hardly spot, but this dark on the right is the raw material in the parts production, which accounts probably 50% of the overall CO2 footprint of Canon. And in 2008, we made a big surge to reduce those CO2 in different areas, and mostly in the raw material with 12%, and in the customer usage. So when the products are once with a customer, being it a consumer customer or a business customer, we see that with the new products, they can reduce 10% of the energy consumption. So for the overall Canon footprint, we came with a reduction in 1 year of 26%. So for a company, that is quite an accomplishment. But of course, we had been reducing over the last couple of decades, and we took 2009 levels to further reduce as a company 20% again over the next 3 to 4 years. So this is the goal we have to achieve as a company. I show you one of the front-runner products, we call it, which is really using the LCA design system, and it will encompass recycle, produce, and use, and I go quickly through some of them. For instance, in the produce area, we know that through the production process, you have to have state-of-the-art, cutting-edge technologies to produce as good as possible environmentally friendly products, and we are using those technologies already in the produce phase. For instance, on another example, you see they're reducing the size of packaging, can reduce logistics, etc., but also smart molding of plastics and parts. And in some cases, like in this product particularly, we're using biomass plastics as a great compartment. So in all the human interfaces, touch points, we have nowadays bio-based plastic, which is not based on the crude oil production of plastics. These products, which are mostly used in the business environment, are fully recyclable. They use the great proportion of recycling plastics already. And you see on top left, these are the electricity consumption of such a product, which with the previous models, it reduces by 63%. And that's immense. As you can imagine, as the biggest manufacturer of printing devices in the world, we have a huge responsibility and an obligation, of course, to contribute for the overall usage. And you see on the other side as well, this is like a calculation of the serviceability. So a more reliable product needs less service intervention. So we need less service engineers to go to a product, fix this. We have less fuel usage by the cars, etc. And this can be calculated by the number of interventions and the mean CO2 consumption by each intervention. We're using this also in Switzerland to track and monitor our CO2 reduction plan, because in our case in Switzerland it's mostly through the car emissions, where we need to reduce over the next 20% for 3 years. So for this particular product, we could actually reduce in the LCA, about 50% in just one product, and especially the energy consumption of 70% is immense. Now, from a communication point of view, we just lately were in a big tender for a local government, and they choose a product which was cheaper, but it's based on a 5-year-old technology. Now, we show them that actually, you can reduce your energy consumption by 70% by using these new, which are a little more expensive, I have to admit, but they're much better. But in the end, it was the purchasing price who made their decision. And this is the reality. So you can communicate a lot about those issues. You say what you do, etc. You say how much you actually reduce. But in the end, a lot of procurement is actually taking place around price. And this is the challenge we are in, because as a company, of course, it's very good to be committed. Of course, we sleep maybe better because we contribute also to the overall CO2 reduction, but in the end, it has to pay off in the market. So the communication, and I strongly urge you that we come up in the next days, that we overcome those challenges. Because Canon, we commit to communication which is measurable and honest. So we don't just put something like, okay, we reduced 20% on what? Was it that high that you can reduce 20%, or were you already that low that 20% is a real effort? As long as it's not comparable, we don't communicate too much on it. So we need hard facts, things like specific actions, like measurable contributions. It must be comparable, because you should compare apples with apples and not just oranges with bananas. Also, I know that Chiquita is very good bananas, of course. And we have to stick to things people understand. Because to me, it's very important, it has to be very simple. If a man on the street, sorry to put it like this, does not understand what it means, it's very difficult to communicate. So we have to come up, also the method can be maybe a little complicated, but in the end, we have to simplify it in a way that you, I, everybody can understand what it means. And for this, labels are very helpful. But the labels have to be agreed on a standard, and I know you guys are working on that. Thank you very much for your effort. So we are using recycling, we're using reuse proportion of those products. This is all already done. But the challenges remain to use product carbon footprint and not misuse it in the communication that we are misusing that on the back of the environment. So I wish you 2 very good, fruitful days, and I'm very happy that you are all here. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope I regained some time. Thank you.
Yes, you did.